Hi, I'm Ian Chambers, author of Plan for the Planet, and what I'd like to do is take you through why I wrote the book, where the concepts came from, and why it's important that we understand what it says about where we are, where we want to go to on this planet, and how we can get there. That's really what the book's about. So let's take a look at Chapter 1, Population. This is what really got me interested in working out what we could do. The population, you mightn't have realised, has increased from 2 billion to 7 billion in the last 60 years. This chapter looks at the implications of that for the planet and what we can do about starting to constructively deal with that as a challenge. But more importantly, look at how that interacts with other areas and how we can use that interaction to positively develop a way of making our world sustainable. Now this is an area that's hotly debated. People are either in favour of it, not in favour. It's either happening, it's not happening. We should do something, we shouldn't do something. The real issue with climate change is if it's real and we don't do anything, what are the implications? If it's real and we do something, have we got a chance of actually tackling it? The key issue is the sooner we start, if it is real, the better we are. That's really what we tackle in Chapter 2. As our population grows, so does our consumption of energy, but also so does our consumption of food and water. 80% of our food production is oil-based. As oil gets more expensive and declines in its availability, that affects our food production. Water, we're actually burrowing down and using unreplenishable water supplies. That has major implications for us on the planet. What we look at in this chapter is how we can start to tackle those challenges. 40% of the water in Europe is wasted. There's things we can be doing right now to make a difference to our food and water supplies going forward. I mentioned we've got 7 billion people on the planet. What's a little bit more disconcerting is 2.5 billion of those people live on less than $2.5 a day. There's a lot of people who really don't have enough food to eat, enough water to drink, safe water, and really a lifestyle that we live. This chapter is really about how we can tackle that as a challenge. Most of the money that goes towards poverty actually doesn't end up with the people who need it. It ends up in other places. Simple things like better management of how we look after not only other species but the other people on our planet, how we work together to build a sustainable world, is one of the real opportunities by managing our resources, our capabilities and ourselves on this planet more effectively. Biodiversity is one of those words that many people think, what on earth does that mean? Well, I'll tell you what that means. In Australia 20, 30 years ago, there were 400,000 koalas in the country. There's 200,000 now. When I was growing up, koalas were an icon in Australia. Now they're potentially a threatened species. But it's not just koalas. All over the world, other species are being destroyed. And not by people going out and doing anything other than expanding their homes, cutting down trees, taking away habitat. But we're not doing it in a sensible way. We're not doing it in a constructive way where we look to the needs of those other species. We need to be starting to think that we're all here. This is our home. This is the home for all of us. And how can we look after the other species on this planet? Because they give back to us probably a lot more than we can ever give to them. As our population increases, food, water resources become scarcer, health becomes a real challenge on our planet and will become increasingly a challenge. Pandemics, the fear of viruses spreading throughout the world have become very real. But it doesn't have to be that way. We get organised if we actually tackle the health problems on a global basis, think globally as well as acting locally, we can actually tackle these challenges. That's what we do in this chapter. look at what's being done around the world, practical examples, and how we can take those best practices and apply them on a global scale. I've talked about many of the problems in the other chapters, many of the challenges we're facing, but one of the fantastic opportunities and challenges is global education. Many people don't have an adequate education on our planet, and yet we find, say with education of women, it's one of the best ways of managing not only our unsustainable population growth, but also increasing family health, increasing opportunities to get out of poverty. So as we look at the interconnectivity of many of these issues, we find that by tackling them in a coordinated global way and getting everybody involved in taking part, attacking those challenges, we actually will get many of the solutions. And education is one of those solutions that can actually help us tackle many of the problems that we're facing now. As the world population increases, energy decreases in terms of its resource and availability, food and water resources become scarcer. The logical conclusion is conflict. In the last century, we actually had a lot of conflict on a global scale. The question is, do we want to head in that same direction? Or do we want to get a little bit more organized and say, hey, we're all one people on this planet. What we need to do is work out how we can work together rather than fight each other. How instead of sinking 1.2 trillion into conflict and the war machine, we actually sink that money into starting to look at tackling the global challenges. Conflict can be the end result, but at the same time, we can work together to make sure that's not the way we head. That we actually build a world that we can all be proud to give to our kids.